I'm going to talk a little bit about, I work at Google. I lead online partnerships. And I want to give you a flavor of sort of the technology that's disrupting everybody's life and work, but also about sort of the human element, which is as important from my experience as well, to drive that organizational change across different industries and verticals. So we've got a lot of content, we've got a lot of videos, so let's just follow. So just a sentence that I actually thought about on the way over here. So technology still, despite all the hype, is very much an enabler. And I see technology is only as good as the people who are wielding and using it. If you implement it improperly, if you adopt it in a bad way in your organization, it's not going to give you the value that you thought about. The people are only as good as the culture permits them. Sometimes you see fantastic talent coming into the organization, poor leaders, poor culture, and that talent cannot materialize on its potential, leaves. So the culture is key. And where's the culture coming from? From my experience, it's through the leadership. It's derived from their actions, from their communications, from everything that they talk and behave. And that's why leaders and leadership still is very much critical for any sort of transformation. Technology can trigger it, but you need the leaders to drive it through. So in terms of the agenda, a brief introduction. We're going to talk about the disruption from technology, business, and people's perspective, how to deal with disruption, and then sort of some ingredients that I found useful of balancing the art and the science of transformation. So one thing that I wanted to mention, I do work in partnerships, and I've worked in various roles in the past before, some of them technology, some of them not so. But nowadays what I see is a lot of functions, including also HR, have to deal with across those three issues of technology, people, and business. And what everybody needs to do is somehow understand how they can transform the data into information that eventually is knowledge that we can base our decisions on, derive insights, actions, and do it over and over again. And that data is not necessarily just numeric. There's a lot of other soft elements of data that you need to consider, and other traits that are as important when you work across those three disciplines. And some of those words eventually are what defines the culture, what is required from leaders today, being as tech savvy also as much as they are also interested in people and having that empathy and those abilities as well. So I work for Google. We restructured about 2 years ago. We're now Alphabet. Google is just the G. Other companies are such as Google X, Nest, and all that. And the reason that we structured is to ensure that we give enough time for these nascent technologies to come up to real products and services. What's Google known for? Primarily innovation, and the important thing is programmatic innovation. So not just a one-time hit, but multiple innovations, some of them acquired, most of them organically built. I/O. So I/O happened 2 weeks ago. That's the annual Google conference where they talked about new technologies and new products and services that are coming into place. These are just a few of them. Android with over 2 billion devices activated worldwide, Google Home Assistant. And I decided to show you 2 quick videos of where this technology is actually taking us, and the future is soon. The one thing that everybody talks about, I'm sure you hear it a lot, about artificial intelligence. I'm going to have a few slides on that as well. The key thing that's happened over the past few years is that image recognitions of machines through those algorithms have become much better than human. And that obviously leads to a lot of these disruptions to industries that in the past depended solely on human, and now there's going to be a mix of that. And right now Google has 8 products that have over 1 billion users of them. The one to the right is Google Cloud Platform, the last to join that list. Now if you ask yourself what is the competitive advantage or what's behind all of this, it's this. It's the data centers, the network that Google has built and perfected over the past 15 to 17 years that continues to innovate. All the innovation right now, a lot of this AI comes from the cloud. And that brings a lot of opportunities to other organizations as well. And Google Cloud is actually where I work in. In the past, it was called Google Enterprise. Then it was rebranded to Google for Work. And now it's Google Cloud. Why is that important? Because it gives you the significance of what Google puts on the cloud. Not work, not enterprise, cloud, which is relevant for small and large businesses. and comprises of two key divisions. First of all, it's G Suite, those cloud-based smart applications such as the Gmail, the Calendar, Drive, Hangout, and the Google Cloud Platform. That's basically what we call about cloud computing. The building blocks that power many organizations today, large and small. And just one thing to talk about cloud. I mean, I know that a lot of you raised your hands before about what cloud computing is all about. Just to understand what is cloud, the whole idea is when you develop any sort of software application, you don't just develop that application. You need a whole set of framework, development work, ops, and administer that to ensure that whatever you develop in one machine can work in another machine and elsewhere. The cloud takes that away and lets you focus on what you do basically best. It ensures that whatever you develop would run everywhere. So initially we had servers. Instead of having your own server room, you'll put it into the cloud. But it moves away from that, moving all the way to software as a service and computing as a service. Whenever you need computing need, there you have it. The key word that I'd like you to remember is abstraction. That's the whole idea of cloud. Making all the mess and hard work that goes beyond that technology invisible for you. So if you're an organization, if you're a person that's not tech savvy at all and needs to interact with technology, you don't care what's happening in the background as long as it does what you required it to do. In addition to that, there's numerous benefits from cost, agility, and as I said, innovation, scale. How does it scale? Let's take an example. Pokemon Go. I hear some laughs, so people use it. So Pokemon Go, obviously a massive hit last summer. How big? That big. Okay, so 600 million, over 600 million active users at a certain point of time looked for Pokemons. The only way it could be done, because we were able to scale their operation and they were based on the Google Cloud. So that's an example of how fast you could reach almost, seventh of the world by adopting cloud. Now the issue obviously that we have is with technologies, situations such as this. I mean, Pokemon Go and others are taking a lot of our attention. But what I found interesting on the internet is if you look back, we weren't that social in the past as well. So in a way, not a lot has changed, but technology has made it very easy for us. I spoke about it yesterday at home. Sometimes, because technology is so easy, content is so easy to get from YouTube videos and otherwise, sometimes we don't want to read because it's too much of an effort, right? That's sometimes the dangers of technology. And the other danger is obviously this, right? We're bombarded with data and information, and there's always a fear of missing out and other reasons for us not to be focused on what we do best. And I mean, research has shown that about 50% of people cannot focus on a certain task. So that's issue in organizations. So let's talk more about this disruption from those three levels: technology, people, business. Start with technology. What's happening? Obviously data. And more of it is going through the internet. Mobile. Mobile is the main device. Not a lot of people using desktop, except this guy over here. But the other thing is that you have more data coming from the mobile as from desktop, and that was recently, just a few months ago. Now behind this technology is actually the cloud. Now the interesting thing is cloud actually came into being from mobile, right? When you have a mobile phone, you worked on cross devices, you wanted to get your data as seamlessly as possible, and that couldn't actually work as well on an on-prem machine. Cloud helped that ability. And with the mobile, we take more photos, we take more videos, so we have more data. So all these technologies together brought up the power of artificial intelligence. So as our CEO mentioned, we started from a mobile first to an AI first. That doesn't mean that we're going away from mobile, but artificial intelligence, you're going to hear more and more and more on it. So let's understand just briefly what it is. So artificial intelligence is the science of computer science of how to make things in a way smart. You break that down, you get to machine learning. That's basically the implementation of that science, teaching machines to learn from themselves. And then you've got neural networks, which is based loosely on how our brain works with our neurons, which ones are getting fired for which reasons, which ones are connected, how strong are those connections. But that's the algorithm that is based on machine learning. And what we do, just like with data, just like with good parenting in a way, We provide good data, the algorithm learns, and eventually we get the insights, and we do it over and over again. And with so much computing power, we can have millions of examples of these algorithms, sometimes something that a human cannot do, because throughout your life, even if you talk to a physician, you see thousands, 10,000 patients. A machine can have 1 million in a few weeks. Now, Google has instilled a lot of these technologies into our products, anything from the smart reply option that you have in Gmail to searchable photos that you have and others. So neural network is basically, it's what we call also a deep learning. So it's a multiple layer, what we call hidden layers, that eventually teach the machine, change the weights of those different variables in order to help the machine understand what's in this very strong probability, for example, if it's a cat or a dog. Now, there's one thing that I remember from class is that the teachers always said, don't disrupt because I've got eyes in the back of the head. Did that thing happen to you, or was that only in Israel, right? Probably it's a worldwide phenomenon. Now, think about, cars, how useful it would be if we have also eyes in the back of our head and in the side and everywhere. And what's great about machine learning is that it's so useful with self-driving cars for two main reasons. First of all, you've got eyes all over, plus sensors all over. You don't need to worry as much as a human. But the key important thing is that machines are much better at learning than humans. So if I have a poor experience or I learn something and I tell that to you, are you going to actually do differently if you encounter the same experience? Probably not. We need to learn for ourselves. Machines don't. So if a car, for example, does a mistake, the algorithm changes and straight away that information is disseminated across all other cars. Straight away they learn. So that's the key advantage of machines. They'll just learn better than we do. People need to understand that 90% of what organizations now capture is what we call unstructured data. Sometimes it's referred to as black data, which means it doesn't fit into a tabular sort of table that you can query using SQL. It's usually images, videos, and text. Machine learning is very good in unstructured data. So all of a sudden, the 90% of the information that wasn't really used to utilize to drive any sort of business decisions becomes available to organizations, and you can imagine how much insight you can gather from that. So new sort of insights that you never had before. So people are changing, more urban, more social, employees different as well. Paycheck, pension is important, but purpose and meaning, in a way, is even more important. Having the ability to have an impact. The hours, again, 9 to 5, does it really sort of matter as long as you do the job? If some employee works better in the day or some during the night, why don't we let him if it's possible? In addition to that, there's also the personalization of the workplace. People prefer sometimes technology at home than the one that they have at work. And the other thing that's coming is the gig economy and how organizations can actually take advantage of people with relevant experience without necessarily bringing them in through the process of becoming a full-time employees. From business, there's just one thing that I wanted to share. Market capitalization last year of the top 10 companies in the world, you see 4 of them are tech companies. Facebook is number 10. Amazon is not even here. Look what happens in 1 year. Top 5 companies in the world are pure tech companies. And the gap between them and the rest is growing. And you see GE over there, and the CEO of GE, Jeffrey Melt, had a good saying is that every company nowadays needs to be a technology analytics company. And that goes back to the slide that I showed. You need to know technology, business, and people. You don't need necessarily to know the best in technology, but you need to be comfortable across those 3 layers. The other thing that comes into play is what's more important for investors' perspective. Is it growth or profitability? Look at Amazon. Growth is massive, but they're not that profitable. So that changes, in a way, the business model as well. And all this is hitting your office. It's hitting your employees. And the question is, how do we actually deal with it? And because I come from a tech company, tech and Star Wars go hand in hand. Why is that? Because in a lot of tech firms, a lot of geeks. Geeks love Star Wars. That's the way it is. So if Obi-Wan Kenobi would say, there's a disturbance that he feels, Master Yoda would say, deal with it. So let's see how we deal with technology and face new problems as well with old problems. We haven't solved those, and some of them have actually become more severe. So the biggest sort of tension that I see in organization is between the innovation and what is required from innovation, the growth engine, from change, non-conformative, being boundless and creative, and corporations, which is slightly different. And those things, when they, in a way, clash, there's a standoff. On the one side, innovation. On the other side, cooperation. And that's where a lot of the tension arises from. And it's from that sort of tension that these sort of ideas come into play, from digital transformation, from culture, anything to try to resolve that tension. And let's look at a few examples. Hippos, everybody know what a hippo is? Of course. So, but nowadays, you don't see as much hippos, right? Because they understand that you can't ignore data, or you can ignore it at your own peril. So what I see is now an evolved hippo. People who understand they can ignore data, but they use it differently. And that's the danger with data. A bit of different context, different meaning, and it's, instead of a data-driven organization, you become a driven data, driven by agenda, by politics, and other sort of reasons. And that's highly not the point. The other thing about the data is that people, God bless them, sometimes love data, ask more and more questions, more analysis, and then you don't make decisions. And the key thing over here is that because there's a lot of disruption and change happening all the time, people want certainty. There is uncertainty, but you can always do another analysis, and that creates a problem, as you can see. The other thing is what I call the last mile of big data. So there's so much work going into the data from the cloud, from the technology, from everything. But sometimes people forget about the visualization, the communication, and the culture of it. And that's the most important part, because if you can't get those three right, then all that work that you've done in the background isn't worth it, because it's not being used eventually by the people in the way you intended it to. So let's talk about a few of those ingredients that would work and break them down from those buzzwords that, in a way, they are. First thing is agile. I mean, agile started off from development, computer science methodology of how to develop software that lowers the risk. So if something changes in 6 months' time, you're not stuck with a certain sort of platform. So you built the software to be flexible, and all the time you create something, so you could change it. So it's very useful in that, but it started to be also useful in the management. So the idea over here is to plan, have a plan, that's always good, but be lean on it, right? Because things would definitely change. So be lean on the planning and agile on the execution. The key thing for leadership over here, tame the need for unachievable certainty. It's impossible. No one can predict the future, and you need to work with it. Dogfooding, anybody heard that term? Referred to both in Google and in Microsoft. That's when you test your own products on your own employees, which again, nothing is better than any sort of simulation or anything than testing your products on real people, either externally or your own employees. And this is a live example, or not a live example, a past example from when I headed the transformation back at Skype. Look how much change has happened from the acquisition of Microsoft, Messenger, Link division coming in. We changed our architecture as well from peer-to-peer to client-server and then to cloud computing. And then Microsoft, that hasn't changed in about 10 years, decided to reorg itself functionally. And then Steve Ballmer said that he quits with no succession plan. 10 months, no CEO across the company, and you can understand what that led to. So you need to be ready for that. The other thing is lean, which ties back into that, because nowadays operations, it's more about removing processes, minimizing overhead, minimizing documentation as much as possible. Anybody heard about the 2-pizza rule? That's Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, says that if you ever need more than 2 pizzas to feed a team, the team is too big. Remember that. And again, change. If there's one thing that I've learned about change is that organic adoption is the way to be. You can't force anything on anyone. And be aware of theatrics, which is innovation theater or change theater or otherwise. Lip service doesn't work over there, and there are a few sort of people who mentioned that as well. And then we come into the culture, which is important, and to demonstrate culture, I want to show you this thing. This is a cyber attack map with the origin, the target, and the type of attack. Almost like a kind of a Star Wars film. And you ask yourself, why is this guy showing me a cyber attack map when he talks about culture? Because sometimes it's the employees and the people who are responsible for that, disgruntled employees not happy with something. So invest in technology for sure, but invest in your people at the same time also. And that brings to leadership. I always found that the team is the basic unit of the organization, not the individual. And that would lead changes also to what we call performance reviews and otherwise, which right now is very much incentivized to the individual as opposed to the team. And here's a recent example. We all heard about the United situation, right? Now, if you think of it, the employees on the ground were good, right? They followed the rules. You're not allowed to give more than $800 or something to that person. And then everything happened. But think about it if the employees would apply their judgment and they say, you know what, in this situation, $2,000, $4,000, $5,000, and maybe not that person, but someone else would get off the flight. What would happen? We wouldn't hear about the situation at all. Nobody would know about it. But the question is, what would happen to that employee? Potentially even fired, right? You worked against the rules. And that's a difficult situation for employees. So if we're not empowering them to make those decisions and not giving them the back and the openness to make those decisions, we're in a rough spot. And I had one time a manager, he wasn't that great, because every team meeting that we had, he said, any questions? It was a fear culture. Nobody raised their hands. So he said, silence is golden. Silence is anything but golden. That doesn't work. If your people don't raise their hands, ask questions, critique, then you're not in the right place. And that has a lot of issues with policies, promotion, and everything performance reviews. We can't continue the way we have been doing. You can ask yourself, is that possible? Here's one example. There's a great document of how Netflix reinvented HR. And if you look at their sort of expenses mantra, all they say is operate in your company's best interest. Not a lot of policies, not a lot of documentation. Much easier, much faster. Save time on overhead, and trust your people. There's two other things that I want to mention. One of them was in a presentation by Sir Ken Robinson that he mentioned that there was a Liverpool music teacher that had two of the Beatles in her class. And she actually said that nothing good would ever come from them. Crazy. But again, ask yourselves today, if you had Steve Jobs, a genius, a guru, a fantastic person that can create a lot of stuff, not an easy one, would he get to any job in the corporations? He would fail, no chance. No organization is going to take a chance on them. So the way that we think about education, about recruitment, also needs to change if we're trying to find that right talent that would help disrupt the company. So overall, it comes down to balance. Technology is great, science is great. You need to balance it with the art in anything that you do, with the multiple thousands of decisions that you need to make every day. When you're trying to be radical about how to change your organization, but practical, right? Because the whole idea about disruption or technology, you need to provide organization a disruptive technology that doesn't disrupt them. We're not here to break everything and change all the time. That's not good either. So balance is key. And as Peter Drucker said, it's not just about technology, it's technology humanity, especially in the age of AI, how we deal with that, how we learn more about ourselves, and that has huge implications in the organizations, from how we lead, from the strategy, how much time we spend on it, from the operations, removing processes instead of adding them, and HR as well. HR, I think, is in a great position to take more ownership of it, as opposed to just necessarily being sometimes an advisor to the management. And I don't know if you know him. I mean, it's a basketball example, so not a lot of crowd for that. But he says something right. I mean, it's not just one leadership style. That's what I mentioned before. Every situation is different. And that's what this kind of leadership that you're looking for. So takeaways, a lot of disruption out there, but not only technology. It's relevant for the business, the people as well. Solutions, technical ones. See how AI can benefit you, because AI is not just for the tech field. It's relevant to any industry and any vertical. It could be a simple algorithm. It could be something more complex. It's relevant. And if you can find out how, that would be great. Cloud and data. It doesn't mean that you need to bring everything to the cloud. See what works for you. From an operational perspective, yes, agile, lean, and change. Again, these are not just for the tech firms. These are methodologies that have proven themselves very useful in management and in software development as well. And the culture. The whole idea of culture is to drive those right behaviors, the right incentives. And if people see on the ground that different bad behaviors are being rewarded, then they're going to behave badly. And we need to be acknowledgeable of that. And again, for leaders, we need to find those who are comfortable with uncertainty and guard their team from it as well. So they can be comfortable with uncertainty, but maybe not each member of their team is comfortable with uncertainty. So they need to absorb it and project that calmness through their team. And with that, I'm done. Thank you very much.